I'm just so excited to talk about these books. I needed an excuse to share them with you, so here we are. Welcome back to Plan for Productivity. In case you are new, my name is Andrea and I am very excited about this video because June was a great reading month for me. I had been kind of in a slump for the entire year. I hadn't picked up a single book in the entire year, and end of May, June, I read 4 books, which I'm gonna share with you guys today, and I made a full list for summer. This has been like the most excited I am for the summer, even though I'm no longer in school, so I don't get a break, but I'm just feeling. I made a full summer books to read list that I think kind of embraces the season a little bit, and I am just excited to be back into reading. Without further ado, I'm going to split this video up between fiction and nonfiction for those of you who, you know, have a specific preference, and we'll get started with the books that I read in June, and then we're gonna do the BTO. The first book I read this year was Tranquility by Tuesday. I thought this was gonna be a very easy start because it's like a 9 rules, pretty much 9 chapters kind of book. I could just take it piece by piece, and while that was very helpful in order to kind of like get through it whenever I wanted, it didn't really let me dive into the book that much, but it is what it is. It got me back into reading. I gave this book a 3-star rating, mainly because I think that there were some rules that I already practiced in my life, and I think the book could have been written in half as many words, but I do think that there's something very valuable in there. So if you're looking for a book to kind of give you practical things that you can apply to get your life a little more together, to get a little more organized, and to feel like you have a little more control in your life, this is a very easy, quick read that you can kind of like pick and choose what you want to read from, and that'll help you do that. The next book I read is by far the best book that I have read in the past few years. It's called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools. This is a Christian living book, so if you're not a Christian or Catholic, then this might not be the book for you, but this book was just so good. First of all, I love his writing. It's right up my alley. He's very, like, it kind of like transports you to somewhere else. When I was reading this book, I really felt like I was in my own space and time while reading, and if a book can do that for you, then that has to be a 5-star read, which is exactly what I did for this one. This one I picked up because I wanted to learn a little more about prayer, and that is what this book is about. It's divided into, I think, 10 chapters, but all different like kinds of prayer, and honestly, it took so many notes. I just absolutely love this book. This is definitely gonna be a reread at some point. And here's the thing. When you're gonna pick up a non-fiction book, there has to be a reason why you're reading it, right? What questions are you trying to answer? What are you trying to learn? And that's something that I do for all of my books. I write that on the first few pages of the book. I write exactly like what the point of me reading this book is. That really helps you to kind of get the most out of the book. This one answered exactly what I wanted to know. To finish off the non-fictions that I read in June, this was the 3rd book, The Obstacle Is Away by Ryan Holiday. This was a great book. This, like, I already love Ryan Holiday. I listen to his podcast, I watch all his videos, and I had already read The Daily Stoic a little bit. So I already know the author pretty well, which always helps when you're reading one of their books. So this kind of was a little bit hard to get into because the chapters are just so broken up. It's like a million chapters, and I just came from reading this book, so this was a huge difference. But oh my god, you have to read this book once in your lifetime. If you like nonfiction, if you like self-development and all that stuff, you have to read this book. I would describe this as the ultimate guide to escape or abolish that victim mentality and actually get stuff done. The Obstacle Is Away, the timeless art of turning trials into triumph, and that is a very accurate description of what this book is about. It's divided into 3 very big sections. I took hundreds of notes and gave this book a 4.5-star rating. If you haven't read a lot of nonfiction, I think this is a very easy, short read that honestly just reads like a motivational speech. And finally, the fiction book that I read in June is Carrie Soto Is Back. I read this one on my Kindle, and oh my god. Honorable mention, I had read 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo last year. Absolutely loved that book, gave it a 5 stars, and fell in love with kind of the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes. The characters when she is writing feel like real people. When I was reading this book, I felt like, can I please just like turn on the TV and rewatch her games? Because this book is about a tennis player that basically has like the world's greatest tennis player kind of title because of the amount of Grand Slams that she's won, and somebody comes in and kind of like takes that away from her, and no spoilers, she comes back to try to win her titles back. And oh my god, this book was a huge journey, huge, just everything. I love the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes, and I was not expecting to like this book so much. I thought that Seven Husbands was gonna be like, probably, it's the most famous one from her, so I thought it was gonna be maybe like her best book, but I absolutely loved this one, and I love the characters in it, and go read this book. Besides, I think it's perfect for summer because of like the tennis vibe and all that stuff. That was another 5-star read for me. Another tip, if you really want to get back into reading, or you want to start reading a lot, is have a list. This is like my books to read list. This is like millions of books that have been recommended to me or that I found that I want to read. But that's not enough, because then this is too much. This is too much choices, and then you won't really feel like you are getting through a list. So I like to make the seasonal books to read, and that has really helped me because it is kind of exciting. I kind of want to get through them in the season because I do kind of pick them a little bit seasonally, and it just feels like now you're tackling kind of a list that you wanted, and I almost never end up sticking to it. I find new books that I'm more interested in, but I have this to fall back on, and I always know as soon as I'm gonna finish a book, or like I'm halfway through a book, what I could possibly read next. So let's get started. We're gonna do fiction first and then nonfiction. I'm in like a romance kind of mood. I want easy, fun little romances that I can just swallow and just enjoy during the summer. My goal is kind of to read some of the most famous ones that I haven't read yet. The first one I think I'm gonna do is Spanish Love Deception. This one is fake dating trope, which I honestly love. This one has really good ratings. The blurb says, Catalina Martin desperate needs a date to her sister's wedding, especially since her little white lie about her American boyfriend has spiraled out of control. Now everyone she knows, including her ex and his fiance, will be there and eager to meet him. She only has 4 weekends to find someone willing to cross the Atlantic and aid in her deception. New York to Spain is no short flight, and her raucous family won't be easy to fool. Enter Aaron Blackburn, and then talks a little bit more about that. But just by knowing that like trope, I'm officially in. I think this is gonna be a really fun read, and I've heard great things about it. Next one is The Bodyguard. This is about a girl that she's actually the bodyguard in the story, and she has to take care of this like rich guy, and you can assume it's gonna be a love story. This one sounded really interesting too. I want to do beach read. This one, and you've probably seen it everywhere, but this book, I have to read it at the beach. Like this is, you have to go to the beach and read this book in one sitting. That's what I've heard about it, at least. This would be my first Emily Henry book, which I think that people say once you get into her books, then you just want to read all of them. This one has a 4-star rating, and it says, Augustus Everett is an acclaimed author of literary fiction. January Andrews writes best-selling romance. When she pens of Happily Ever After, he kills off his entire cast. They're polar opposites. In fact, the only thing they have in common is that for the next 3 months, they're living in neighboring beach houses, broke and bogged down with writer's block. Until one hazy evening, one thing leads to another, and they strike a deal designed to force them out of their creative ruts. Augustus will spend the summer writing something happy, and January will pen the next great American novel. She'll take him on field trips worthy of any rom-com montage, and he'll take her to interview surviving members of Backwoods death cult, obviously. Everyone will finish a book, and no one will fall in love, really. And then some other books along this kind of like genre is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, The Love Hypothesis, which is another one I'm sure you've seen all over TikTok, and Love in Other Words. This one I'm very excited to read about because it's written by Christina Lauren. This is a duo of authors, Christina something and Lauren something. Probably look for their last name, but their author name is Christina Lauren, and I read a book by them last year called The Unhoneymooners. I absolutely love that book. Read it in like 3 days. It was very fun, very entertaining. Enemies to Lovers, so honorable mention for here for the summer if you haven't read it yet. But this one specifically is another book by them that is about a new pediatric resident that is planning her wedding, and then I think she meets or sees like her first love or something like that, and that's when the story erupts. And I'm very excited because obviously I want to do pediatrics, and I'm not a resident yet, but will be in the future, and so I think this would be a very fun read for me. Aside from rom-coms, which clearly I have a million that I want to read, I want to challenge myself to read a classic this summer, and the one I chose is Little Women. This book is huge. Huge. This was like the edition that was on Barnes & Noble. I don't know if I love it. I might get like a cuter one and return this one. But everybody knows about this book. There's a movie about it, and I've never seen the movie, and I really want to see it. So I want to read the book first. I don't know, it just caught my attention, and hopefully I can get through it during the summer. Another very famous book that I am dying to read. I honestly don't even know what like genre this is. The first book I am reading, I already started it, is Essentialism. You might have seen I posted that. I was reading this on my Instagram. I'm loving it so far. I have known about this book for like 9 years. 9 years. 9 years? Wow. And I'm only reading it until now because I just got a feeling that I had to read it. This book is by Greg McKeown. It's called Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And that is literally what this book is about. It is a guide on how to teach you to find what is essential in your life and live like that. Honestly, I am surprised at how much I am learning from this, because this is the kind of book that you read the title and you're like, okay, I know what you're gonna say in the entire book, but you don't. This is a really, really good book. I'll keep you posted on my Instagram what I think about it and on my Goodreads. Probably the next book I'm going to read is The Power of One More by Ed Milet. Again, this is somebody that I listen to every single episode of his podcast. I love him so, so much. That podcast is so entertaining and so insightful. You can see a little bit of a trend here. I really love to read books by people that I already listen to. This one just seems like a really good book. I never read his first one. I didn't even know he had another book, but I'm very excited to get started with this one, as the premise of The Power of One More is simple. You're much closer to the life you dream of than you think you are. You're often only one more meeting, one more relationship, one more decision, one more action, or one more thought away from living the life you deserve. In this groundbreaking book, Ed Milet introduces you dozens of strategies he has used for 30 years to become a highly prosperous entrepreneur, performance coach, and globally sought after inspirational speaker. I heard him mention it on the podcast, and ever since he mentioned it, I've had this phrase with me of just do one more, just do one more, just do one more. I'm like studying and stuff, so I think that reading that's what this book is going to do for me. And honestly, I love Milet so much, so have to read his book. I definitely want to read Searching for Enough. This is the first book by the author of Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools, Tyler Staton. I just absolutely loved the way he writes so much, so I really want to read this next. Wow, this one has a 4.35 rating on Goodreads. Like, it has to be a good book. Along these lines, I was listening today to a podcast, actually Ed Milet podcast, with the actor that plays Dwight in The Office, and he wrote a book that's called Soul Boom, I think. He's talking about spirituality and all that stuff, so I think that's the other book that I'm gonna read around this topic for the summer. In terms of more like self-development-y stuff, I want to read The Brain That Changes Itself. I honestly don't even know how this made it to my books to read. Stories of personal triumph from the frontiers of brain science. So again, right up my alley. I love books that have like stories about people that are successful. For some reason, I find that very motivating. And then if you merge this with science or brain science, psychology, and all that stuff, that sounds right up my alley. The next one is The Paradox of Choice. This is a book I want to read because I struggle with this a lot. And when I was reading through Essentialism, it talks a little bit about the fact that this world, we have endless choices all the time, always at our disposal. And it's very hard to kind of focus in on the things that matter, or be able to not feel that kind of like I'm missing out on something. And so I think this is kind of what this book is trying to prove, and it's definitely something I need to hear. Along the lines of psychology, I want to read Stumbling on Happiness. I was on Goodreads and I just saw that Ali Abdaal rated it 4. So now I'm dating it a little bit because he always rates everything like a 5. If you have the slightest curiosity about the human condition, you ought to read it, trust me. Right now, I'm very curious on the topic of happiness. Just, I want to understand more, like, what does that really mean? Why are we all chasing it so badly? Along the lines of happiness is The Molecule of More. This is a book that I heard recommended by Dr. Andrew Huberman. It's on dopamine, and obviously we are a dopamine addicted culture, so this is a book I want to read on that. And then finally, a little bit on creating content and sharing stuff online. I want to read Storyworthy. I'm into this like season of where I just want to share what I'm learning and like the things that interest me, rather than kind of create so much content. So hopefully this book is going to be some guide on that, which is why right now on my Instagram, I'm trying to share pictures and like things that I'm learning from some of my favorite books. Follow me there to stay tuned to see if I actually get through this list or what new recommendations I can give you. If you want to know a little more about how I read nonfiction and how I get the most out of those books, or another idea I had was to read more books, let me know in the comments so I can make those videos for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Happy summer reading, and I'll see you guys on the next one.